everyone, and thank you very much for being here. My name is Andrada, and for the past 4 years, I've been with ING Hubs Romania as a DevOps engineer. In this session, I'm going to show you how we go from code to cluster in our organization, and how we've reached over 10,000 Kubernetes deployments in the past 6 months with only one pipeline. We call that pipeline the King's Road. We're very big Game of Thrones fans. I have a challenge for you before I begin. Tomorrow, when you open your work laptops and get some cake, hopefully, you start by looking at your CI/CD setup. Remember this session and think about what you can use from it. The benefit of doing that, it's going to be time. Time to automate that tedious process that has been bugging you for a while, and to implement that very cool feature from your backlog. The agenda for the next half hour is going to look like this. First, I'm going to tell you about the context, what was happening in the organization back then, and how we got here. We're going to look at the solution layout, its building blocks, and how it looks right now. We're then going to look at the Kubernetes features and other CNCF projects we make available in the pipeline. And lastly, we're going to look at the risks and how we dealt with them. Looking at the context. It was 2019 when inside our organization a technology shift was happening. The stack consisting of GitLab, Jenkins, TFS, and Ansible Tower was being migrated to Azure DevOps and OpenShift. A need for a more standard deployment approach was identified then. Before this, our engineers were creating their pipelines however they saw fit, respecting some guidelines and policies. A small team of engineers collaborated with the developers of a Tier 0 application to create a POC of the pipeline. If you are successful with that, we certainly will be successful with any other application. In 2020, the Tier 0 application went live in production in ING's private cloud. Soon, other teams were interested in our pipeline as well, and that application became our top promoter. In 2021, the word spread to other countries from ING Hubs as well. There were similar initiatives happening, but we were the first ones to go in production. Then we expanded to countries like Romania, the Philippines, Belgium, Poland, Spain, Italy. We were already in the Netherlands before this. In 2022, we kept growing organically. In the organization, however, deployments were being decreased to focus on the reliability and resilience of the application. Things the King's Road pipeline was already providing. That was a catalyst that allowed us a much bigger growth in the next year. In 2023, the King's Road pipeline became mandatory. We are now in 2024, working towards our usage goal. We just reached half of it, and we still develop and deliver features for our consumers. The King's Road pipeline is a set of templates developed for Azure DevOps pipelines. Its goal is to automate the CI/CD process of applications using the internal SDK and the service mesh of ING. There are around thousands of applications right now using that service mesh. With this graph, I want to show you how we grew in the last 5 years. We started with 0 consumers in 2020, technically 1, but we had around 30 in 2021. We reached over 100 in 2022, 400 in 2023, and now we stand at 930 applications, so almost 1,000 of them. It's all fun and games, me talking to you about those big numbers, but let me show you how we actually got to those numbers by looking at the solution layout. There is nothing very new with the actual flow. We have a build template, release, and test. The build part is developed around Spring Boot applications. In order for a user to use the template, they need to package their application into a fat jar. From there, we rely on Maven to do the heavy lifting and actually build the application. We also need a configuration file, but in a special format. I'm going to tell you about that in the next slide. We also provide a template to build the Docker image that's going to be used in the deployment. Starting from a base image from the infrastructure team, we inject the jar there, scan it, and push it into an Azure Container Registry. The release template is plug and play. You can use it with any other type of application as long as you provide the correct input, a Docker image, and the configuration files. Here we employ a continuous delivery approach rather than a continuous deployment one, so we still need manual validations. We're a bank after all. But those manual validations were reduced to a minimum. The test templates are similar to the build ones. The tests must be packaged into a fat jar. They are then released in OpenShift to run, and the results is being retrieved by the pipeline with a feedback loop. As I said in the previous slide, we use a special format of the configuration files. Because we use Helm to do the actual deployment in OpenShift, this allowed us to impose a configuration standard that it's easy for the consumers to create and for us to use. A consumer must provide the following: a zip archive containing a directory for storing their certificates, a directory for storing the application configuration files, and the values YAML file containing some configurable flags. To complement, the pipeline offers the templates directory, which contain all the Helm chart templates and Kubernetes manifests needed for a deployment. And obviously, the chart YAML. Arriving at the fun part now, the actual Kubernetes features and CNCF projects we implement. Sorry, I skipped this. Part of the pipeline, we have configurable checks and enforced ones. We're gonna now look at the enforced ones, sorry. The deployment strategy is defaulted on rolling update. We don't want any downtime when we do the deployment. We have affinity rules in place to accommodate the HA configuration of ING's private cloud. Network policies are deployed every time a pipeline runs to ensure the connectivity to the service mesh. We also look at the image pool policy setting and some other things we check. Looking at the configurable ones now, teams can configure their ports, obviously. They can configure startup readiness and liveness probes. They can use cron jobs and have multiple containers inside their pod. And they can configure some scaling objects, the horizontal pod autoscaler, and a very interesting object, we call it the quota autoscaler. Before I continue, please raise your hand if you ever had to manually rescale your namespace. Yeah, not a lot of people. The rest of you are very lucky because depending on your organization and what you use, it can be a tedious process. That's what was happening for us. But luckily for us, our great engineers from the infrastructure team developed a custom resource, an open source custom resource for Kubernetes called the Quota Autoscaler. It was created to automate a process, the namespace scaling, that our engineers needed to do. Before the existence of this, if someone wanted to scale their namespace in our organization, they had to go to a resource management portal, enter the new values there, click on apply, and wait for the changes to be applied, which might have taken a while, couple of minutes, but still inconvenient. Right now, it's enough to just configure this manifest. This is available on GitHub as well. I can provide you with the link later. This is how the manifest looks like. And here you can see how a Kings Road user can configure it directly in the configuration files. The quota autoscaler uses a resource quota object that must already be present on the namespace. Based on the utilization of the namespace, the quota autoscaler scales up and down the limit of the namespace. Some other important features we make available. The pipeline wouldn't be complete without Prometheus monitoring. Depending on the ING private cloud implementation you use, Prometheus monitoring is done using either a central node or an operator. The service monitor is exposed to the users to configure, and the infrastructure team provides the Prometheus implementation. Then the metrics are available for users to see in Grafana dashboards. A reliable pipeline provides a stable rollback mechanism. For us, Helm enabled us to do so. When you trigger a rollback action in the pipeline, a Helm rollback command is being run on the namespace, and your chart is brought back to its previous revision. Last but not least, we also provide automatic certificate management using Cert Manager. A dedicated team built a layer on top of Cert Manager to accommodate our ecosystem. With that, users can make CSRs directly in the pipeline, get them signed by the ING PKI, and obtain their brand new SPIFFE certificate like this. And they can do that every time they deploy, leveraging the 30-day deployment cycle we have. We also used Reloader in the past, but we don't use it anymore. I've already mentioned that the deployment strategy is enforced on rolling update, but we also have canary deployments available, but using the pipeline only. This is only the phase 1 of this feature for our implementation. When you trigger a canary deployment in the pipeline, a canary pod is being created alongside your old deployment. Because it's the phase 1, we don't control the traffic load yet or the routing to that deployment, so the canary pod receives the same amount of traffic from a random subset of users. After a designated period of time, if the canary pod is stable, then this becomes the current deployment. If the canary pod is unstable, we delete that and all deployment remains in place. Lastly, we're going to look a bit at the risks and how we dealt with them when serving so many users. I would define our organization as one with a very strong risk culture. And staying in control of the risks your own applications can create is essential for a reliable environment. We contribute to this with Kings Road by providing checks and validations using Python. Part of the many checks we do are some of the following. We look at the application requests and limits. Those two must be equal because we don't want Kubernetes evicting our pods for consuming all of the memory. The deployment branch must be a stable one, either main or master. A secure code reviewer must have approved the last commit on that stable branch that you use for your deployment. The base image must be infrastructure approved and vulnerability free. And some other checks. Because the happy flow of a deployment isn't always the case, sometimes deviations appear. Let's pretend that you're in a major incident, you just finished implementing a fix on your bug fix branch and you really need to deploy. That's not a stable branch, so your pipeline will definitely fail. But for this, we made available Break the Glass. It's a simple manual validation where you justify the fact that you're not using a stable branch and you can deploy. Of course, all of your stakeholders and managers get informed about this, so you're gonna have to do some explanation later. We don't only use Python to write our policies. We also use Rego for that. Policy as a code is enabled inside ING by using Open Policy Agent. Another dedicated team built a layer on top of Open Policy Agent to accommodate our ecosystem. With this, you can make assertions of the policies directly in the pipeline and use further their input. Some of the checks we do with Open Policy Agent are the following. We look at the internal SDK one application uses. We look at the Kings Road version an application uses. As a fun fact, we don't support all 100 releases. And we also look at the application configuration files. We expect teams to use some custom properties to mitigate any possible risks. And before we begin with the demo, please raise your hand if you know what the demo effect is. Okay, for this question, many of you know. For those that you don't know, it's when you need to present something in a conference or in a Teams call or anywhere, and something breaks in your demo. The application, the pipeline, the infrastructure. Luckily for this, I came prepared and I have a recording. Okay, in this recording, I'm going to show you 4 things. First one, how a pipeline actually looks like and how easy it is to write the YAML. The second thing, we're going to look at some events about the certificates. Obviously, I cannot show you how a real certificate looks like for us. We're then going to look at those scaling objects I spoke to you about earlier, the horizontal pod autoscaler and the code autoscaler. And lastly, I'm going to show you how easy it is to do a rollback with our pipeline. Okay. So in the first screen right here, you can see my mouse moving, right? Okay. In the first screen here, we start with the stage, with this first stage. This is using Checkmarx code and dependency scan. It's one of the many tools we use inside our organization for making sure we stay secure. The stage below it is used for doing the actual build of the application with Maven and publishing it, and publishes all the needed artifacts we have to use further in the pipeline. The third stage right here is used for building the actual Docker image we're going to use in OpenShift. We build it, scan it, and push it into an Azure Container Registry. The last stage here, the biggest one, is used for doing an actual deployment. As a teaser, this is for a test deployment. For production, it's much bigger than this. We have jobs responsible with running policies, with running break the glass approvals and validations. We have jobs responsible with some pre-work for automatic certificate management, jobs that do the canary deployment, and lastly, very important, jobs that do the actual deployment. Okay, now I'm gonna skip a bit. Arriving to the YAML. So this is how a pipeline looks like with a minimal amount of parameters. I have two templates called. The first one right here is for calling the build templates. This is actually a wrapper for the first three I was talking to you about, the checkmarks, the build and publish, and the Docker build, scan, and push. Okay. And if I scroll down, this is how the release template looks like. Some specific parameters that we need in order to connect to OpenShift. And this block right here is how easy it is to define the environment where you want to do the deployment. You can deploy to containers, VMs, in ING's private cloud, and in ING's public cloud, Azure Kubernetes Service. Next, we're going to look at those big four terminals. I hope you can see what is written on them. If not, I can zoom it. Please, okay, thank you. So, in the terminal right here, I've set a watch on the resource quota object that was already present in the namespace. So I can show you exactly how efficient the quota autoscaler is. If we look here at the limits memory, I see that in that moment in time, I had 1 GB of memory used from my namespace from, let's say, to round it up, 5 GB. That was the maximum I could use. If I go down at some point, I'm going to see that this limit increased because my usage on the namespace increased. So the quota autoscaler adapted accordingly to keep that, in this case, it's going to be 20 to 30% utilization. Before we get into more details about this object, I will first show you some events about the certificates, because in my deployment I also did my, my automatic certificate management. Okay, we're going to look at the event for the certificate request. Come on. Okay, and if we look at the last line, I see that my certificate was fetched from the issuer successfully. Now I'm going to show you the event for the certificate. And if I look again at the last line, I'm going to see that the certificate has been issued successfully. Lastly, I'm going to do a get on the secret containing the actual certificate. And as I expected, it is here, it is created. All of this together with the fact that my pipeline finished on green tells me that the certificate works and the application as well works with it. Looking at the quota autoscaler object first, I'm going to show you a bit of its specification because it's essential to understand what actually is doing to the namespace. When defining the autoscaler, we define behaviors for scaling up and scaling down the namespace. Right now, the quota autoscaler is looking at the CPU and the memory. This is for scaling down, the values for scaling down, and my values for scaling up. But to translate to you those blocks in plain text, at any point in time, my resource utilization on the namespace must be between the scale down and scale up value. In this case, at any point in time, the resource utilization of my namespace must be between 20 and 30%. I am, of course, defining some minimum and maximum levels, because as I don't want my pods to consume all the memory from the namespace, I don't want my namespace to take all the memory from the cluster. For my case, I have a minimum memory of 2 gigabytes and a maximum of 10, minimum CPU 50 millicores, and maximum CPU 500 millicores. Now I'm going to show you part of the configuration of the horizontal pod autoscaler. Its config is quite similar to the quota one. I'm also defining behaviors with scaling up and scaling down policies, but those are a bit different. Those are telling the HPA object, I'm going to call it for short HPA because it's a mouthful to always say it. Those are telling the HPA with how many pods it will scale up and down the deployment. What is written right here says to the HPA that I want you to scale with using 1 pod every 10 seconds. Okay. I'm also defining a maximum and a minimum of replicas I am allowed to have in my deployment. The minimum replicas is a bit down, that one is set to 1, and the maximum replica is set to 4. This means that even if I want to manually rescale my deployment to 5, 6, 7 replicas, whatever, that's not going to happen because the HPA object is there and it's not going to let me do that. Lastly, the most important part, how the HPA decides, okay, how do you actually scale up and down this deployment? It looks at the memory and the CPU utilization. I have the memory, the average memory utilization, set on 30, and the average CPU utilization set on 90. To translate it again, at any point in time, if the average memory utilization of all the pods from my deployment are above 30%, then I do a scale up. Or at any point in time, if my average CPU utilization of all the pods in my deployment is above 90%, you do a scale up. So it's very important that I have an or, either memory or either CPU. Okay. Next, what I did is I set a watch on the horizontal pod autoscaler object. What is interesting for me from here are those values. The first one is for memory. This means that right in that point of time, the average memory utilization of the pods from my deployment was at 27% out of 30. The CPU, however, was at 200. So that tells me that I should expect at least 3 pods, let's say, in my deployment. I originally deployed only 1. Okay, same thing, the usage grew. Right here I did a get pod. And guess what? I have 4 pods. And it's interesting to see how those objects actually influence each other. You start with the quota autoscaler. You do 1 deployment. Suddenly the CPU and memory rises because the application is starting. I'm not in that 20-30%. I'm gonna give the namespace some more resources. HPA watches too. I have my CPU above 90%. Okay, I'm gonna put another replica, but that also consumes memory, and those two influence each other. But this is a behavior I specifically designed for the demo to show you how efficient they work and how efficient they can work together. Okay. Last thing, I'm gonna show you how easy it is to do a rollback. I go back to my pipeline. Okay. Yeah, the QuickTime isn't... I go back to my pipeline, sorry for... I hope you saw when it was run, and then Helm rollback at one point for action. The pipeline starts running, only one job. What I'm doing here next is I'm quickly looking at the status of my Helm revision. I am at revision 2. I already had another deployment done on the namespace, so we have what to roll back to. And while this is running, and after a couple of iterations of Helm history command, okay, almost done. Finally, I can see that my third revision appeared, which is a rollback from 2 to 1. And I have one more slide to hopefully not bore you with, which is wrapping up. The purpose of the King's Road pipeline is to automate the CI/CD process of our applications using the internal SDK and service mesh. We provide build, release, and test templates. The build works for Spring Boot applications, and the release works with any kind of application as long as you provide a good input. The Docker file and the configuration zips. The configuration zips are actually part of the Helm chart that gets deployed in OpenShift. We use Prometheus monitoring, native Helm rollback functionality, automatic certificate management with Cert Manager. We provide canary deployments. Phase 1, we're still working on that. We're doing checks and validations using Python and Open Policy Agent. I really hope I convinced you tomorrow to look at your setup and use some of the solutions we implemented. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andrada. Do you have questions? Oh, great.
Hello, quick question. You showed us how you do rollbacks of the Helm deployment. I'd be curious to know, how do you deal with database rollbacks? Because I believe you have some database also in the background, right?
Yes, we do have, but our solution is not for deploying databases. There is a separate pipeline solution for that developed by a different team. We are only dealing with APIs, with backend APIs.
More questions? Okay, I do have a question. You said you implement Cert Manager for certificates.
Yeah.
Do you take into account Cert Manager limits? I mean, if you have multiple ING teams that request a Cert Manager certificate, you have a limit for your domain. Do you handle this?
No, we don't handle this, not our team. We make it possible for teams to use Cert Manager in the pipeline, but that dedicated team deals with all the issues that happen with this.